Houston is definitely taking it on the chin with regard to oil prices and the related job losses. We are seeing a 10% decline quarterly sequentially in terms of housing starts in Houston, down I think 14% year on year comparing the fourth quarter to fourth quarter. And interestingly, we're seeing some impact on home prices there as well. But interestingly, Dallas is very different. Dallas housing starts are up, according to our data, by 17% comparing fourth quarter to fourth quarter. So Dallas is not suffering at all overall in a kind of aggregate basis from the oil decline. Phoenix is also near the top, and that's partly just because 2014 was such an awful year for Phoenix. So it's a little bit of a comp there. And let's go to Houston again. Now, what we have found historically when we look at our data and we compare what's gone on in Houston to what's happening with oil prices is that when there's a sweet spot. When you're between $55 and $90 a barrel, that's when things are really rocking for housing in Houston. When you go above $90, you're suppressing people's home buying budgets because of just the cost of transportation and inputs that go into petrochemicals and all of that. And then below $55, of course, the oil industry is getting hurt much more badly, and that starts to somewhat impact housing demand. And so we're obviously well below that number, below $30 recently. So we're in for some continued adjustment there in the Houston market. Let's take a look at this graph, which is vacant developed lot change by market. So what this shows you is where are developers and builders preparing to build more homes in the next few months. Austin is off like a shot. Lot development up huge there. Interestingly, Houston also has developed a lot of lots. Tampa, Southern California, and then you have markets where, like South Florida, which are at the low end of the scale only because there's just very little land left for development in that market. Anyway, vacant developed lots are sort of like another movie reference, Zombieland. In markets like Sarasota and Bradenton, it looks like there's more than a 100-month supply of vacant developed lots, but you have to remember that in markets like that and in markets like Phoenix and Atlanta, you have tons and tons of lots that are just not viable for the market right now. There's 180,000 vacant developed lots in Atlanta. About maybe 15 to 18,000 of them are actually viable today. In Phoenix, 50,000 vacant developed lots. Sounds like an extraordinary, shocking number, but 30,000 of those are zombie lots that really are dead for the time being and don't represent competition. However, zombies do have a habit of coming back to life. Eventually, those will get brought back to life and re-energized in the market, and they could become competition. Or maybe you'll be, if you're a builder that's looking to acquire lots, maybe those will become your lots. So framing the discussion, let's talk about where the risks lie. I think we're transitioning away from micro risk, which is kind of market level risk, and towards more macro risk. Many trends are improving, but exogenous factors, that's economist speak for recession, could come along and overwhelm those positive forces. We're continuing to watch, we're on recession watch, I guess you could say, but we don't see any immediate signs of a recession, but it is something to keep in the back of your mind as you're doing your business plans, especially as you're thinking a couple of years out, and be prepared for a contingency of what happens, what am I going to do, how should I prepare in case the economy softens a great deal. We're projecting an additional 110,000 starts, single-family starts this year compared to last year. But where and who? Are we going to build all those in the A submarkets, which is what a lot of the builders are trying to do? No, there's not enough supply of lots and land in those A locations to supply the market with the household formation rates that we are projecting. And then a lot of the builders, too, are kind of going head-to-head, going, okay, we're going to be in the best locations. We want to build move-up homes, and we're competing head-to-head against everybody else because everybody's doing that, and everybody's kind of going after that. I'm using $500,000 and up kind of as my loose definition of move-up, but it varies a lot by market. That's a starter home in San Francisco. But there's not enough buyers in that move-up market to allow us to get back to 1.5 million, 1.6 million housing starts on an annualized basis. So we have to start looking to the entry level, and that means what locations may have been C locations in the past that are now B locations and so on. This is actually a slide I showed in November of 2003 as I was talking to our clients. Key points to take away from my discussion at that time. Changes are coming. Be cautious about long land positions. Okay, maybe I was a little early, but because by the next year, 2004, people were saying, Brad, you're still warning that things are going to come down, and you said that last year, so we're not inclined to listen to you. So it was a bit like the boy who cried wolf. You said that last year. So my February 2004 warning carried more of a time prediction. I said at that time, watch what you're paying for land. Within 3 years, we will see projects failing. And everyone looked at me like, what are you talking about? Nobody could imagine projects failing because every project worked at that point in time. And throughout 2004, I used to quote Warren Buffett, who used to famously say, yes, a rising tide lifts all boats, but when the tide goes out, you find out who's been swimming naked. And we found out there were a lot of naked swimmers. From my 2005 mid-year speech, now this was about 6 months before the Florida market, which was one of the first markets to decline, really fell out of bed. So I was talking about ARMs getting ready to adjust. This is a slide I showed then. $1 trillion worth of loans will switch to adjustable payments in 2007. And it wasn't just about, mortgage rates are going to adjust higher, but just that they were going to become fully indexed, right? Because you had those teaser rates, and your teaser rates sometimes were like 1%. And so just going to kind of a fully indexed rate would be a substantial increase in the monthly payment. And I talked about Las Vegas. Las Vegas was already falling by that point in time. We saw listings starting to stack up as the investors tried to market the homes that they were trying to flip, and they couldn't find enough buyers, so the listings increased from 4,000 in January to 15,000 listings by October of 2004. I showed this slide in Florida, Las Vegas, the fallout. Buyer traffic has fallen in half in Las Vegas, months of supply increasing, and months of supply of finished vacant inventory was an indicator that I was reporting at that time too. And what we saw is, and our bank clients were turning to us, and I was saying, look, there's some problems forming. And the bankers were saying, what do you mean? Our builders are still current on their lines of credit. They're still reporting and showing us closings. I said, yeah, they're closing the homes, but nobody's moving into them. And that's going to stack up that inventory and start to cause a big problem. And they went, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And so we saw in Vegas at this point in time, mid-05, that unit pricing was cut by 20 to 25% by some of the builders. Pulte was one that really slashed prices. Now, here's a great example of how bad data led to a national disaster. If you were looking at projects, possibly planning a new subdivision in Las Vegas during the 2004 time period, for example, you'd have looked at, if you looked at just what housing production was doing, like a lot of people looked at permits. If you looked at building permits or starts in this case, you would have said, oh, demand looks like it's at 35,000 per year. But real demand would have been shown, if you looked at the Metrostudy data on move-ins, at 25,000. So it's a big delta. And people that looked at the wrong data got overpaid for the land, and then they expected too high of an absorption rate, and so on. So absorption was 1/3 less than production at that point in time, and our data was showing that. Same thing happened in Miami. Big delta between what looked like was going on and what was really going on in terms of actual demand. So with that, I appreciate you letting us help you, because we're able to kind of see what's coming up and what's going on, and turn that information over to you and to help you. So at this point, I would like to bring up John McManus. Thank you.